all right, sucker, you tell me. What does Guns N' Roses actually stand for? And sadly, I don't always get the response I want, but the response I'm looking for is this was an entity that stood for the worth of every soul. And I'll use the line out of the song again, even the souls of urchins from under the street. And they weren't afraid to talk truth to power, and they were anti-establishment and anti-authoritarian. And I think those are all thoroughly worthwhile aspects of a creative entity.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is fundamentally what GNR stood for in the moment, in the early days, when we hadn't sold a record, and, Duff's looking at me and saying, Niv, do you think we can actually do this? When, I'm telling them what to expect on their first trip to England. Utterly worthwhile to represent that. And that, to me, is the best of Guns N' Roses. That it's the worth of every soul, and fuck the man.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's what initially got me into them. And also some the deepness there, where it is, fuck the man, damn the man, save the empire, to use another quote. But, I came in with my age group was the November Rain and the Estranged, where there was that damn the man, but also that deep thought that really a certain energy that they put out that other bands didn't. It was a nice mix of anger and emotion that I identified with, and I still identify with, that I even got off with Chinese Democracy that was on there. So that's what I like in my music. That's what I like in my movies, in my friends. I like a mix of anything can happen, but there's more to you. There's a deeper meaning to who you are and how you operate. And that's what Guns N' Roses is to me, and why I've been doing 65 episodes of a podcast about them. But to use another quote that you have used before, and actually had to correct somebody on Twitter, when you called Izzy Stradlin the heart of the soul, right, of GNR?
Yes, not heart and soul, but heart of the soul.
Right. So
that was the correct statement that I made, and I feel that very profoundly. I feel that, and it was interesting to me that in the Wall Street Journal piece.
You picked up on it. That's where I'm segueing it to. So, yeah, this is the last part of Shotgun News, where Izzy, if you haven't been on the internet the past few days, I know this podcast, we try to be in real time and do it as much as possible.
Well, Neil Shah of the Wall Street Journal.
Right.
And reading a Wall Street Journal piece is a little bit like trying to chew glass.
Okay.
First of all, it's way too short. Secondly, it is far too formal. And, the Mr. Rose, the Mr. this, the Mr. that, the formalism of it is a little odd. But I was very intrigued that Neil picked up on a quote from Duff's book, which I haven't read. But there's a very interesting quote from Duff out of his book about Izzy that, I think I would tell anybody who's listening, check out the Wall Street Journal piece. It's worth it just to read that quote.
I'm going to bring that up right now, because the quotes, of course, that's like the one I didn't write down. So while I'm looking up that quote, let's get to another thing that Izzy mentioned in the article, and that is, of course, not being a part of the reunion. So he told the Wall Street Journal, my non-participation was simply not being able to reach a happy middle ground through the negotiation process. That's life. Sometimes things don't work out. What are your thoughts on that? Do you have any? Because I know you of course, you broke on this show that he was involved in a sound check. Do you know what the negotiation process was? Do you know? Is there anything deeper you can tell us?
Well, let's get something straight and clear first. I didn't break that news. The fact that Izzy went out to wherever it was Nashville or somewhere like that. Yeah, I knew of it in the moment, but it was also all over a GNR chat room where somebody who was there and hanging out with the band was talking about it, and they put it up in the chat room, and no one seemed to care then, but, apparently Axl got upset when I mentioned it. But, Yeah, he did turn up and do a sound check, and he did leave after the sound check, and obviously something upset him. I'm not a party to the negotiations. I'm not in the room. I'm not even really a fly on the wall. But you can draw your intelligent conclusions, you know. Obviously, something was wrong with the negotiations. And I think when you have a situation where one member of the band is taking 50% of the income, it doesn't take a fucking rocket scientist to figure out why the negotiations didn't work out as regards the fiscality of it.
Well, then, because I'm not a rocket scientist, so what do you think it was? Do you think it was like what his role was going to be? Maybe his involvement in what the box set was going to be? Again, I know you're not Izzy, and I'm not asking you necessarily to speak for him, or if anything, just give your opinion on what that could be.
Look, it's no secret that from my personal and probably intensely personal point of view, that I have stated in public before, that if you sat me down and said, you know, who was, and this is why I wanted the Duff quote, because this is basically what Duff says in his book.
Can you paraphrase?
Yeah, who's the major factor in the band? Who's the primary factor in the band? I put it more bluntly and said it was Izzy's fucking band. I mean, he was the one who moved to the city from Lafayette first. He was the one who got the foothold in Los Angeles. He was the one I always relied upon for a response when I needed input from the band. If Duff was too drunk, if Slash was too high, if Axl was on the radar screen, I always could count on Izzy. And not only could I always count on Izzy, but I could always count on Izzy creatively, because he is a wonderful rock and roll writer. And to me, the best of Guns N' Roses comes from the marrow of Izzy's bones. You know, play Dust and Bones. There it is. And to be fair, maybe Izzy and I were fated to have a certain empathy together. We're born almost exactly 10 years apart. I'm April 7th, he's April 8th, and we used to hang out together when we were touring. When others were asleep or nodded out or crashed out, Izzy would be the one who'd want to go and play tourist with me. Hey, Niv, let's go and look at this. Hey, Niv, take me here. Hey, Niv, let's get an airboat and go chase alligators on the bayou. Sure is, let's go. What somebody does and what somebody doesn't do has an eloquence. And the fact that he doesn't go out there and tour with the band tells you something about Izzy's comfort zones and what he feels like doing. Yeah, he's a musician. He likes to write. He likes to play with people every now and then. Does he want to go through the mechanism of recording, of touring? Apparently not, because he doesn't. If you've got money in the bank, it solves all the problems you had when you were poor. However, it gives you a different set of problems, and they can produce just as much anxiety and stress on you as the problems you had before. And I think it's a case that with Kurt Cobain, that once he became Kurt Cobain, he started to go, I'm not sure this is really what I thought it would be, and I'm not sure that I'm happy with it, and I'm not sure that it makes me happy. And in that respect, maybe Kurt and Izzy share an experience, because with Izzy, he never expected Guns to be as big as it was, and he wasn't very happy when it became that. Look at what he did with Juju Hounds. It was, let's go theaters and clubs, let's dial it back, let's concentrate more on the music. I don't want to spend 3 years making an album.